You know that feeling when you're walking past a dark alley and the hair on the back of your neck stands up because your brain thinks something is watching you. Imagine feeling that every single time you look out your own front window. That's what it was like living across the street from 1402 Cedar Terrace. I'd been renting the downstairs unit of a duplex in a quiet suburban neighborhood for about 6 months. It was normal stuff. People walked dogs, kids rode bikes, everyone mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings. Everyone except the guy at 1402. The house itself was unremarkable, just a beige ranch-style build from the 70s. But in the 6 months I lived there, I never saw a single light turn on inside that house. Not a lamp in the living room, not a flicker from a TV, not even the quick flash of a refrigerator light when you grab a midnight snack. I work the graveyard shift stocking shelves at a big box store, so my schedule is flipped. On my nights off, I'm awake when the rest of the world is asleep. I spend a lot of time sitting on my porch at 3 a.m., smoking cigarettes and just staring at that void across the street. It wasn't just dark, it felt like the house was swallowing the streetlights around it. At first I assumed it was vacant, then I met the owner. I was coming home one morning around 7, squinting against the sunrise, and there he was, checking the mailbox. He was maybe 50, thin, with pale, almost translucent skin. He wore heavy wraparound sunglasses even though the sun was barely up. "Morning," I said, trying to be neighborly. He flinched like I'd thrown a rock at him. He turned his head slowly, not quite looking at me. "Morning." His voice sounded dry, unused. "I'm Dave across the street. Just moved in a while back." He nodded tightly. "Mr. Kalin, my eyes," he gestured vaguely to his sunglasses. "Very sensitive, photosensitivity condition. I prefer the dark." It made sense. It explained everything. I actually felt bad for being creeped out. For a few weeks, I let it go. Then came the thunderstorm in late August. It knocked out power for a 4-block radius around 2 a.m. Everything went pitch black. The streetlights died. The hum of AC units stopped. Silence. I looked out my window, expecting 1402 to look exactly the same as always. It didn't. For the first time ever, there was light. It was a faint, sickly orange glow coming from a small basement window near the ground. It pulsed slowly, like a dying heartbeat. If Mr. Kalin needed total darkness because of his eyes, why did he have an emergency light down there? And why did it look like fire? A week later, I saw his car pull out around dusk. I knew he did his grocery shopping at night. I did something stupid, something I still regret. I crossed the street. I just wanted to peek in a window to prove to myself it was just a normal, messy house inside. The front living room window had heavy blackout curtains, but there was a small gap at the edge. I pressed my face against the glass. It took my eyes a minute to adjust to the gloom inside. The living room was empty. Not just tidy, I mean completely empty of furniture. The carpet had been ripped up, showing bare concrete. And there were no light fixtures on the ceiling, just wires hanging down where they used to be. A cold sweat broke across my forehead. I moved along the side of the house toward the back, where the basement window was. I had to know what that orange glow was. I knelt in the mulch, peering down through the dirty glass. The basement wasn't empty. There was a cot in the corner and someone was sitting on it, hunched over. It looked like Mr. Kalin. He wasn't wearing his sunglasses. He was just staring at the floor, rocking slightly. The orange glow wasn't a light bulb. In the center of the concrete floor, there was a metal bucket with some kind of smoldering charcoal inside. It cast long, dancing shadows against the walls. Then I saw the other shadow. It was in the far corner of the basement where the light barely reached. It was tall, impossibly thin, and pressed right up against the ceiling. It looked like a smudge of Vantablack against the gray wall. As I watched, the black shape peeled itself away from the corner. It didn't walk. It slithered down the wall like thick oil. It moved toward the man on the cot. Mr. Kalin didn't react. He just kept rocking. The thing reached out a hand, or what looked like a hand, just 3 long, jointless fingers, and rested it on Mr. Kalin's shoulder. The man on the cot finally looked up. He looked directly at the basement window, directly at me. His eyes were wide, terrified, and completely white. He mouthed one word. "Run." The black thing snapped its head toward the window. I didn't see a face. I just saw a sudden, absolute absence of light where a face should be. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet, and sprinted across the street to my duplex. I locked every door, turned on every single light I owned, and sat on my couch with a baseball bat until sunrise. The next day, there was a for sale sign in front of 1402. I never saw Mr. Kalin again. The house sat empty for a month before a young couple bought it. They renovated it, put in big bay windows, and keep warm, welcoming lights on every evening. It looks normal now. But I moved out 2 weeks after they moved in, because sometimes, late at night, when I looked across the street at that perfectly normal house, I could still see a faint, pulsing orange glow from the basement window, just beneath the surface. And I knew it wasn't Mr. Kalin down there anymore. You know that feeling when you're working a closing shift, and the world just feels a little too quiet, like everyone else has gone to sleep, and you are the only person left awake. I used to love that feeling until the night I delivered a pepperoni pizza to a house that shouldn't have existed. I was 20, working for Tony's Pizza in a standard suburban town. It was boring, but it paid for gas and college textbooks. It was a Tuesday night, maybe 11:45 p.m. We closed at midnight. I was already wiping down the counter, mentally checking out when the phone rang. My manager, Tony, groaned and picked it up. He listened for a second, looking confused. He scribbled something down and hung up. "Last one, Chris," he said, tearing off the ticket. "Weird address, though. Out on Old Millers Creek Road." I hated driving out there. It's way out near the edge of town, where the streetlights end and the woods get thick. It's mostly scattered trailers and long, dark driveways. I grabbed the hot bag and headed out to my rusty Honda Civic. The fog was setting in thick that night. By the time I got to Millers Creek Road, I could barely see 10 feet in front of my headlights. The trees seemed to lean over the road, creating this tunnel of branches. My GPS led me to a gravel driveway, almost completely hidden by overgrown bushes. I turned in, the gravel crunching loudly under my tires. There were no lights on. The house at the end of the drive looked dead. It was an old 2-story farmhouse with peeling paint and windows blacked out by grime. It looked like nobody had lived there in 20 years. I sat in the car for a second, engine idling. My stomach dropped. You get a sense for bad situations doing this job, and every alarm bell in my head was ringing. I checked the ticket again. 142 Millers Creek. This was definitely it. I grabbed the pizza and stepped out into the freezing air. It was dead silent, except for the wind moving through the dead leaves. I walked up the creaky wooden porch steps. There was no doorbell, so I knocked on the heavy wood door. The sound echoed way too loudly. Nothing. I waited a decent amount of time. I was just about to turn around and leave, figuring it was a prank call when I heard it. Footsteps inside. They were slow and heavy. Thump, thump, thump. They stopped right on the other side of the door. I held my breath. No one spoke. No one unlocked the deadbolt. I could just hear breathing on the other side of the thin wood. It sounded raspy and wet. "Pizza delivery," I called out, my voice shaking a little more than I wanted it to. The lock clicked loudly. The door cracked open just an inch. It was pitch black inside the house. The smell hit me instantly. It smelled like stagnant water and something chemical like strong bleach. I couldn't see a face in the gap, just darkness. Then a hand slid out through the crack. It was holding a crumpled $20 bill. "Keep the change," a voice whispered from the dark. It's hard to describe that voice. It sounded flat, mechanical but wet at the same time, like someone trying to talk with a throat full of mud. I reached out slowly to take the money. I just wanted to get out of there. As my fingers brushed against the hand holding the cash, I froze. The skin felt wrong. It was freezing cold, which made sense given the weather, but it was waxy, too smooth. It didn't feel like flesh. It felt like rigid plastic. I instinctively pulled my hand back slightly, dropping the money. That's when the hand lunged. It grabbed my wrist with shocking, crushing strength. It wasn't a human grip. It felt like a vice clamp tightening on my bone. The door swung open wider, pulling me off balance toward the pitch-black entryway. The light from the porch dimly illuminated the figure standing there. It was tall, wearing oversized, dirty work clothes. I looked up at where the face should be. It was a mannequin head, smooth tan plastic, no eyes, no nose, just a painted line for a mouth. But the sound was coming from it. That wet, raspy breathing was coming from a plastic throat. I screamed. I dropped the pizza bag and yanked my arm back with everything I had. I felt something pop in my shoulder, but the plastic grip broke. I fell backward down the porch steps, landing hard in the dirt. I didn't look back. I scrambled on all fours toward my car, scraping my knees up. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I could hear heavy thumping on the porch behind me. I slammed the car into reverse and tore out of that driveway, kicking up gravel. I drove way too fast all the way back to the brightly lit main drag of town. I told Tony I got mugged and quit on the spot. I didn't care about the paycheck. I never went back near Millers Creek Road. I tried to tell myself it was just some sicko wearing a mask, some meth head messing with a delivery driver. But I know what I felt. I know the difference between skin and cold plastic. And I know that voice wasn't coming from a human mouth. The worst part isn't the memory of that night. It's that now, whenever I order food late at night, I catch myself staring out the window at the street. I'm terrified of who, or what, might actually show up at my door. If you ever walk out to your car in the morning and find a strange key taped under your bumper, do yourself a massive favor. Throw it down the nearest sewer grate. Don't get curious. Don't try to figure out what it unlocks. Because once you turn that key, you can never go back to not knowing. I didn't take that advice, obviously. My name is Tyler. I live a pretty standard life in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago. I work it for a logistics company I keep to myself, and I pay my taxes. I'm boring by design. 2 days ago, I found the key. It was silver, generic, wrapped tightly in blue painter's tape against the underside of my rear bumper. I only noticed it because I dropped my phone while loading groceries. There were 3 numbers stamped on the key, 402. A smart person would have called the cops. A paranoid person would have sold their car. I just stood there in the parking lot, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't just a random prank. Someone had to have been lying on the pavement behind my car to put it there. They'd been close. The key looked familiar. It was the kind used for those cheap padlocks on rental storage units, and I knew exactly where one was. There's a massive orange and white U-Store facility about 3 miles down the highway from my apartment. I drive past it twice a day. Curiosity is a nasty drug. Against every instinct screaming at me to drive away, I found myself pulling into the gravel lot of the U-Store, and 20 minutes later, it was dusk. The rows of corrugated metal doors looked like endless, identical jail cells under the buzzing sodium lights. The gate code was scrawled on the sticky side of the blue tape I'd peeled off the key. That detail made my skin crawl. They knew I'd find it. They knew I'd come here. I parked near row 4. The silence out there was heavy. Unit 402 was halfway down an alley that felt narrower than the others. I stood in front of the roll-up door, my heart hammering against my ribs. The padlock was brand new. The key slid in like butter. I popped the lock and shoved the heavy metal door upward. It rattled loudly in the quiet evening. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into the dark space. The unit wasn't empty. It was full of boxes, my boxes. I stepped inside, the air smelling musty and stale. I opened the nearest plastic tote. It was filled with my college textbooks. Another box held old framed photos from a vacation I took 5 years ago with an ex-girlfriend. A third box contained a cheesy plastic trophy from a little league baseball game when I was 10. This wasn't random junk. This was my past. Stuff I thought I had lost in various moves, or stuff I assumed my parents had thrown out years ago. It was a museum dedicated entirely to me. My phone buzzed violently in my hand, nearly making me drop it. It was a text from a blocked number. Just 2 words, "Look closer." I froze. The hairs on my arm stood straight up. I spun around, shining the light toward the open door, half expecting someone to be standing there silently. It was empty. I looked back at the stuff. "Look closer." I stepped deeper into the unit. In the back corner sat a small, beat-up wooden nightstand. I recognized it immediately. It was from my childhood bedroom. On top of it sat a red spiral-bound notebook. I walked over slowly, my breath catching in my throat. I opened the cover. It was a journal. The handwriting was jagged and rushed. Day 1, he noticed the key at 5:43 p.m. He hesitated longer than I thought he would. Day 1, he arrived at the unit at 6:15 p.m. He's wearing the gray hoodie. I dropped the notebook as if it were on fire. It wasn't just a record of today. I flipped back a few pages. Day 14, Tyler went to the grocery store at midnight again. He bought frozen pizza and cheap beer. He looks tired. Someone hadn't just stolen my old stuff. They had been watching me intensely for weeks, documenting my life. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the blocked number. "You forgot something." Underneath where the notebook had been resting, there was a small, rectangular object wrapped in cloth. I unwrapped it with shaking fingers. It was a smartphone, an old model I haven't used in years. It was powered on, the battery somehow full. The screen glowed in the dark unit. It was open to a video file, paused on the first frame. The video thumbnail was a shot of a living room. My living room in my current apartment. The angle was from up high, maybe from a vent or a high shelf. I pressed play. The video showed me last night, sitting on my couch watching TV. I was totally oblivious. Then the camera angle shifted slightly. In the corner of the frame behind the couch, a shadow moved. A figure dressed entirely in black slowly stood up from behind where I was sitting. They held something long and metallic in their hand. They stood there for a full minute, just watching the back of my head, inches away from me. Then they silently lowered themselves back down into hiding. I stopped breathing. I wasn't watching a recording from weeks ago. That was last night. The phone in my hand rang. It was the blocked number. I answered it, my voice caught in my throat. "Who is this?" The voice on the other end was distorted, low and gravelly. "Did you like the show, Tyler?" "What do you want?" I whispered, backing toward the exit of the storage unit. "I want you to know how easy it was," the voice said. "How easy it is to get inside your life. You build these little walls, you lock your doors, but you never look in the corners." "Where are you?" I demanded, trying to sound tougher than I felt. "I'm close," the voice rasped. A new sound came through the phone speaker, a metallic rattling sound. It sounded exactly like the roll-up door of the storage unit right next to mine being slowly lifted. I dropped the phone and bolted. I didn't look back. I sprinted to my car, tires spinning in the gravel as I tore out of the lot. I drove straight to the police station. They went out to the storage unit. It was empty. All my old stuff, the journal, the phone, gone. Unit 401 next door was empty too. They found nothing. No fingerprints, no traces. They think I made it all up, some kind of mental break. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. I moved out of my apartment the next day. I'm staying in a cheap motel 3 towns over under a fake name. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time. I keep waiting for a text or a noise in the corner of the room. I thought I escaped the trap, but now I realize the storage unit wasn't the trap. The trap was letting me see how vulnerable I am and then letting me go. Because now I'm never alone. Every shadow has eyes. I should have just thrown the damn key away.